Shalom, Israel. Brother Reggie Jr. here. So today I'm going to be doing Genesis chapter 4. So let's go ahead, guys, and get right into this. Genesis 4:1, and it says, "And Adam knew his wife Eve, and she conceived, and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord." So Adam had sex with his wife Eve. She got pregnant, and she became pregnant with her first ever son, and his name was Cain. Verse 2. "And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground." So Abel was the second son that Eve ever had. And we see here it says that Abel was a keeper of the sheep, as was a keeper of sheep. So Abel was a shepherd. And it says Cain was a tiller of the ground. So Cain was a farmer. Abel the shepherd, Cain the farmer. Verse 3. And in process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. Verse 4. "And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering." Now, before I get too much into that verse 4, because I kind of want to pair that up with verse 5, I want to get into the part about how they brought an offering unto the Lord. So with Cain, it was his fruit, being that he was a farmer. And with Abel, it was the firstling of his sheep. And it says they brought that as an offering unto the Lord. So we have, first of all, you mean to tell me that long before the creation of the nation of Israel, before Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, and Noah, before all of them way back here, you mean to tell me they was offering to the Lord? They absolutely were offering to the Lord. It's nothing new under the sun. That's why the Lord said, what has been shall be again. Israel was the only nation that the Lord gave his laws to. See, that was the only difference. But at this time, it was only going by seed line, if that makes sense. But let's go ahead, though, and find out what this offering actually was. Because, brothers and sisters, this wasn't just some random offering that they were bringing. We should know what this offering is, and I'll give you a hint of what it is. Verse 4, it says, "And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof." So let's see what that was. Let's go ahead real quick, guys. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus 23. And I'm going to read, I think I noted it down right here. No, let's go to Exodus 34. I want to go to Exodus 34 instead. Exodus 34, and I'm going to read verse 19 through 22. And it says, "All that openeth the matrix is mine." So this is what the Lord is saying. "All that openeth the matrix is mine. And every firstling among thy cattle, whether ox or sheep, that is male. But the firstling of an ass thou shalt redeem with what? With a lamb. And if thou redeem him not, then shalt thou break his neck. All the firstborn of thy sons thou shalt redeem. And none shall appear before me empty." Verse 21, and it says, "6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. In earing time and in harvest thou shalt rest." All right, here we go. What were we looking at in Genesis chapter 4? Here we go, verse 22. "And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, and the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end." So that, brothers and sisters, that is what we were looking at in chapter 4. So I just kind of wanted to bring that to you guys' attention because I had never actually seen that before. Because, you know, sometimes I have a bad habit of just reading through, but I learned sometimes you got to slow down and pay real close attention to detail because you may get some understanding that way. But let's go ahead, guys. I'm going to read verse 4 again. And I'm going to read that with verse 5. And it says, "And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof." And it says, "And the Lord had respect." It says, "And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering." Verse 5, but it says, "But unto Cain and to his offering, he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth," meaning Cain was very angry. And it says, "His countenance fell." So we see that the Lord had respect to Abel and to Abel's offering, but to Cain, he didn't have respect to Cain or his offerings. And before I get into that, let's go ahead real quick, guys, and let's go to Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11. Another one of those books that I always fumble trying to find. Hebrews chapter 11, chapter 9, chapter 10, chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 4, and it says, "By faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain." Okay, how did he offer a more excellent sacrifice than Cain? Well, let's find out. "By which he obtained witness that he was" what? "That he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh." So we see that Abel was a righteous man. So it wasn't the fact that it was his offering. It was he himself. He was a righteous man. But you're going to see what I'm talking about here in a minute. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 4. And I'm going to read verse 6. It says, "And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? And why has thy countenance fallen?" And I'm just looking, making sure I ain't missing nothing. All right, verse 7. And it says, "If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted?" Now that's very important. It says, "If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him." So it wasn't that Cain's sacrifice was ugly or that it was nasty. Yeah, Cain, because what do they say in the Christian church? Cain, he brought, nasty sacrifices to the Lord. In other words, he brought nasty fruit to the Lord. Because when you brought an offering to the Lord, especially with first fruits, you were supposed to bring the best to the Lord. Well, people try to spin that and say that, oh, Cain, he didn't bring his best to the Lord. Oh, no, Cain brought his best to the Lord. But that wasn't the problem. The problem is the first part of verse 7. It says, "If thou doest well." Well, let's go find the scripture to see what the Lord meant by that. So let's go to 1 Samuel 15. And I'm going to read verse 22. So let's see what the Lord meant when he was talking to Abel. Here we go. "And Samuel said, Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord." Let me read that over again. "And Samuel said, Have the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices." Okay. Weren't they offering this stuff up? Wasn't they offering it to the Lord? "As in obeying the voice of the Lord. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice." Let me read that again. "To obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken," meaning to listen to God, "is better than the fat of rams. So that's why, if you go back to Genesis 4 and 7, that's why he told Cain, if thou do as well, will I not then accept your sacrifice? This means Cain was not obedient to the Lord. This means Cain was a wicked man. Okay? And the Lord ain't taking no offering from no wicked man. Especially if you got evil thoughts up here, he ain't going for it. Okay? Just like the Lord, a lot of times, a lot of y'all pray to the Lord and you always wonder why. Man, I wonder why the Lord, it's like he don't hear me. It's like he don't care or something like that. No, it's because up here you have wicked thoughts. You have wicked intents. Okay? Especially if the Lord see you got some, you got some kind of evil in your mind. Man, he's not going to accept your prayer, because your prayer too, that is an offering. But guess what? He gonna back that thing right down if your mind ain't right. But like I read in Hebrews 11 and 4, it says that Abel, hey, his report was that he was a righteous man. That's why the Lord accepted Abel's sacrifice, because Abel obeyed God. He was righteous. But not Cain. His brother was the exact opposite. His brother was wicked. Therefore, the Lord did not accept his sacrifices. Just like when we were in the land. All Israel did all day long was sacrifice to the Lord. Sacrifice, sacrifice. They offered offering after offering after offering. But they enemies was still beating them upside their head. And you want to know why? Because Israel kept murdering. They kept lying. They kept fornicating all over the place. They kept extorting widows. That's why the Lord allowed the enemy to come and beat our ancestors' heads in. And from there, we are here in this captivity, serving out our punishments. Why? Because we were so obsessed with offering and sacrifices, not understanding that all the Lord ever wanted was for Israel to obey him and just listen to him. That's all he ever wanted. Even when our ancestors came out of Egypt, he didn't require a sacrifice. But because Israel did not obey him, because they didn't listen to him, guess what? The Lord said, we're going to have to do some sacrifices, some offerings. All because Israel's disobedience, refusal to listen to God. And that's just how it worked, man. But Cain, his offering was accepted because his offering wasn't accepted because he was a wicked man. All right. And we're going to see very shortly a perfect example of this. Let's read verse 8 and 9. And it says, and Cain talked with Abel, his brother. It says, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. Now, Cain didn't just raise up and slay Abel just for the hell of it. No, there was a reason why Cain slew or murdered his brother Abel. And we're going to find out what that is. But let me go ahead and keep reading. Verse 9, and it says, and the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? Because after he was murdered, the Lord realized Abel wasn't around. And it said, and this is what Cain says. And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? So Cain up here trying to hide the murder of his brother. But let's go ahead and go back up to verse 8. It say that Cain slew his brother Abel. Well, let's go ahead and see, brothers and sisters, why he did this. Let's go ahead real quick and let's go to 1 John chapter 3. And I'm going to read verses 12 through 15. Let's see why Cain murdered his brother Abel. Okay, now mind you, this is long after the Lord rejected Cain's sacrifice but accepted Abel's. 1 John chapter 3 verses 12 through 14, and it says, let me read up to verse 11 because that's an important scripture. It says, for this is the message that ye heard from the beginning. What beginning? It's talking about from Genesis. This is the message all the way back from Genesis, especially concerning Cain and Abel. For this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Verse 12, not as who? Not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, who was of Satan, and slew his brother, meaning murdered his brother. And wherefore slew he him? All right, so now it's about to tell you in verse 12 why in Genesis 4 Cain murdered his brother Abel in cold blood. Let's see why he did it. It says, because his own works were evil and his brother's righteous. And if you still don't know what that means at this point, I'm going to give you we're going to go into a different book and we're going to get some scriptures out of there to show you what Cain's crime was that led to the murder. Verse 13, marvel not, my brother, if the world hate you. And this world here is talking about Israel, okay, and the saints in the world. 14, we know that we have passed from death unto life, because we love the brethren. He that loveth not his brethren abideth in death, because Cain had to hate Abel. It even tell you, well, let me see. Let me go back real quick. I don't want to say nothing crazy. No, it didn't say. But in order for Cain to have murdered his brother Abel, he had to hate Abel. Because you don't murder somebody you love. That's how you know Cain hated Abel in his heart. Because remember, all wickedness proceeds from here. And I'm going to show you that right here in verse 15. It says, whosoever hateth his brother. And it started up there. Whosoever hateth his brother is a murderer. And ye know that no murderer have eternal life abiding in him. So with Cain, the thought was up here. He began to hate his brother up here. And we're going to see what caused him to commit the murder. We're going to look at that in a minute, but I want to get you guys to see that it started up here first. This is why when the Lord came, he wanted Israel to deal with this wicked ass mind that we have. And a lot of y'all in Israel, you come shalom and all of that, but I see straight through it. Here at Israel's church, we see every last one of y'all. We read right through it. Up here, you have nothing but evil and wicked thoughts towards us and towards the rest of your people. We are not fooled in the slightest. But let's go ahead real quick, guys. And let's go to Matthew chapter 27. And so remember, the Lord accepted accepted Abel's sacrifice and rejected Cain's sacrifice. So he accepted Abel's but rejected Cain's. And we know that in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain murdered his brother Abel. And then we had just read in 1 John that Cain murdered his brother Abel because his own works were evil, but Abel's works were righteous. But let's see what caused that wickedness to come up in his mind. Matthew chapter 27, verse 11 through 18. Here we go. Now this is Jesus standing before Pontius Pilate, and it says, and Jesus stood before the governor being Pilate. And the governor asked him, so Pilate asked Jesus, saying, art thou king of the Jews? And Jesus said unto him, thou sayest, verse 12. And when he was accused of the chief priests and elders, so when he was accused by the leadership of Israel, he answered nothing. Verse 13. Then Pilate said unto him, hearest thou not how many things they witness against thee? Verse 14. And he answered him to never a word, meaning that even when Pilate questioned him with that, he still didn't say, now he didn't respond to the accusations, neither did he respond to Pilate's question, okay? And it says, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly, because remember, Jesus was being delivered up by the leadership of Israel to be put to death by the Romans, all right? And usually Pilate was probably used to seeing people beg for their life. I didn't do it, man. I didn't. Not Jesus. He didn't say a word, like a sheep to the slaughter. Verse 15. And it says, now at that feast, the governor was wont to release unto the people a prisoner whom they would, because this was some kind of tradition that Pilate had with the Jews. And it says, and they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, and if you guys don't know, Barabbas was an insurrectionist, and he had murdered somebody during his insurrection. Okay, 17, it says, therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, whom will ye that I release unto you? Now, this is Pilate's attempt to try to free Jesus. He said, whom will ye that I release unto you? Barabbas or Jesus, which is called Christ, or the Christ? Verse 18. For he knew that for envy they had delivered him. So Pilate knew that for envy, it was in the chief priests, the Pharisees, the scribes, Sadducees, lawyers, all the leadership of Israel was in their mind to have Christ delivered up to be put to death or murdered because of what Pilate said. Envy. That, brothers and sisters, that is why Cain murdered his brother Abel. The envying started up here. And that envy, it caused him to hate Abel. He hated that Abel was accepted before God. He hated that Abel was righteous and that he wasn't. But God even told Cain, if thou doest well, D-O-E-S-T, if thou doest well, will I not accept your sacrifice? No, but instead of Cain fixing his raggedy behind up, he decided he was going to envy his brother, which eventually led to hate, which eventually led to murder, just like with the leadership of Israel with Christ. That envy led to them murdering their Messiah. That is exactly why Cain murdered his brother Abel. Because why? Because Cain's works were evil and his brother's righteous. That's why he murdered his brother and then attempted to cover it up. So it was conceived up here. That's why the Lord warns us. He warns us against envying, and he warns us against lying, and he warns us against covetousness. He warns us against those things because he understands where it is going to lead. That's why Jesus said, if you hate your brother up here, he said, you are a murderer. See, a lot of us just say, man, as long as I ain't killed my brother, I mean, I wanted to do something to him, but hey, as long as I ain't kill him, you know, I feel like I'm pretty good by God. No, the Lord say up here. If you hate your brother up here, and there's a lot of y'all Israelites, a lot of males and females among Israel, you hate each other. And if we were back in the land, some of y'all that's pretending to be righteous, and it's a whole lot of y'all, majority of y'all are pretending to be righteous. If we were back in the land, you would have murdered so many Israelites, it wouldn't even be funny. You would be murdering the very Israelites that you say you would have so-called rocked with. I would have rocked with Paul. I would have rocked with Jeremiah. I would have been rolling with Christ. No, you would have murdered him. And I see a lot of y'all mindsets. A lot of y'all would have murdered them same prophets, those same righteous men. Y'all would have been right there murdering Abel. Why? Because I can see some of y'all. We see what you're doing. You got the same mentality as Cain. Instead of repenting, instead of fixing your life up, becoming obedient to the Lord, no, you hate on those brothers and sisters who living right, who's obeying God, who's rightly dividing the word and teaching the people, thus saith the Lord. You want to kill them and murder them. You want to harm them. See, the most you can do, because you under these white boys, the most y'all can do, because you are under these white boys, the most you could do is slander. But I know if we were back in the land, you would have a lot of saints' head on the chopping block. So I want to let all y'all Israelites know, God see you. You can feign yourself to be righteous all you want, but you got the spirit of Cain in you. You got the spirit of Cain and the spirit of our wicked ass ancestors that want to murder the righteous in cold blood. Why? Because your works are evil. Now remember, brothers and sisters, why am I doing all this talking? Because it's not just about speaking about Cain and Abel. That's fine and dandy. But we got to figure out how this applies to you, how this applies to me. These scriptures were written aforetime for our learning. That's why sometimes I got to do some talking and share with you how the story of Cain and Abel still represents the righteous and the wicked among Israel. It's still going on, but it's just because we under these white boys that y'all don't murder us or murder other saints because we under them. So the most you could do is slander us, slander other brothers and sisters, call them false prophets, call them spiritually dead. That's why you have to do all those things, because you know you ain't in the land to where you could put your hands on us. But the day is coming where the Lord gonna get you. He is gonna judge you, and he see you. And all them prayers you shooting up with that wicked mindset you got, I just want to let you know he hear you, but he don't hear you. All right? Let's go ahead, brothers and sisters. So, yeah, Cain murdered his brother Abel because of envy. He was mad because Cain was accepted by God and that he lived a righteous life before God, and that in contrast to the fact that he wasn't accepted and that he didn't live a righteous life before God. And rather than repenting, he became envious, which led to hate, which led to him murdering his own flesh and blood brother in cold blood. All right, but let's go ahead and let's continue this thing. Okay, now we read verse 9, and we seen that Cain attempted to hide his brother's murder. But let me read real quick. Let me just read verse 9 again. The Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? So that was Cain's attempt in trying to hide the murder of his brother. Excuse me, I'm belching, y'all, because I had ate a whole bunch of cookies before this. So let's go ahead real quick, y'all, and let's go to not First John. Let's just go to John chapter 8 and verse 44. And it says, ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. For he was a murderer from the beginning. Now Satan, we know he was the true murderer in the garden. But nevertheless, Cain, he was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. There is no truth in the devil. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own. For he is a liar and the father of it. So Cain, he let the devil get in his ear. That's what happened. Let them feelings arouse up, end up murdering his brother. Now that is not what I wanted to actually read. There was something else I wanted to read, but it's okay. I felt like we needed to read that, so why not? Let's read verse 10. It says, and he said, what hast thou done? Okay, this is the Lord responding to Cain murdering his brother and trying to hide it. What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me unto the ground. So let's figure out what that means when it says, the voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. So let's go ahead real quick, guys. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12, and I'm going to read verse 23 and 24. And it says, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn, okay, which are written in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect, right? And to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling, that speaketh better things than that of Abel, right? So remember, we're trying to figure out what that means when it says, the voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me unto the ground. Now, I read that for a reason. Let's go ahead and go to Revelation chapter 6. And I'm going to read verse 10. And it says, and they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, doest thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? So now when we go back to Genesis 4, we see that when it says the voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me the ground, what was it crying? Lord, avenge me of my murderer. And who was his murderer? Cain. So that's what Abel's blood was crying out to the Lord. Not literally, but whenever the wicked slay the righteous, especially when the innocent blood is shed, it calls for vengeance. Okay, so it was calling for the Lord to avenge him of his brother Cain, or avenge him of his murder that Cain committed on him. All right, let's go ahead and move on, man. Verse 11, it says, and now art thou cursed from the earth, which have opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. And when thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond thou shalt be in the earth. So now it says that, it says that Cain is cursed from the earth, meaning Cain's peace is now completely gone as long as he lived. All right. And it says that when he tilled the ground, meaning when he went to do his agriculture, the ground would no longer produce for him specifically, not his descendants, him. He was the one that committed the murder. Okay. So he could no longer, and that in itself, that's like a living death, because how are you going to feed yourself? All right. And then it says he would be a fugitive and a vagabond, meaning that Cain would now become a wanted man, and he would always be a wanderer. He would always be on the run. And that's what happened with murderers. Whenever murderers murder somebody, what do you see? They go into hiding. They're always running. They're on the run. Somebody's looking for them 24/7. And guess what? You ain't gonna have what? You ain't gonna have no peace. All right. Now, let's continue to read. Verse 13, it says, and Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. So you murdered your brother Abel, but then when you get judged for it, you saying your punishment is greater than you could bear. But what about when you murdered your brother in cold blood? Your brother didn't want to be murdered and taken out of the earth, but you murdered him. Showed no mercy, no compassion, just stamped him out. But now he says, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Don't murderers do that too when they get caught? What they start do? Them dummies start crying up a storm, crying they behind off whenever they hear the judge say the death sentence, or when they hear that judge say, oh, you got 2 life sentences, or 150 years in prison. Then all of a sudden they want to cry and say, man, this is harsh, man. How y'all gonna do that? Yeah, but what about the person you murdered, though? You didn't show any kindness, compassion to them. And I think too, it's in the Bible. I don't know if that's in Deuteronomy or not, but I know the Lord was talking about how you should show a murderer no pity. So when you in the midst of a murder, you dealing with a murderer, you don't show them jokers no pity. All right. But let's keep reading. Verse 14, it says, "Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid." Okay. "And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth." You darn right. Now, Cain says, "And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me." Because remember, the earth wasn't populated that much. But hey, living 900 freaking years, I'm pretty sure after 900 years, that's a lot of people on this earth by that time. That's plenty of time for Adam, Eve, and for the rest of them to get busy. Okay. But he's saying, so Cain, he realizes that, once men begin to multiply on the earth, they're going to figure out what I did. Okay. And they're going to try to slay me. And it may not specifically be Cain's descendants, but it could be Seth's descendants that find out what he did to his brother, his deceased brother Abel, and try to come and shed his blood for shedding the blood of Abel. Okay. And Cain, he understood that. Verse 15, and it says, "And the Lord said unto him, Therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him." Now, let me tell you why the Lord did this. Now, you cannot find this in the Bible, but let me tell you why the Lord did this, because you might have some idiots that probably try to say, "See, the Lord is pitying the murder. He told us not to pity a murder. He's pitying the murder." Listen, what the Lord is trying to do is he's trying to prevent bloodshed. Okay? Because you have to understand that if somebody murders Cain, and whoever loves Cain see that he has been killed. Let me just put it this way. Once the killing starts, it don't stop. Next thing you know, you got a whole war on your hand. So what the Lord was trying to simply do is prevent more bloodshed. Because you know how man is, right? I'm serious. I've even seen like real life cases where somebody's son murdered somebody, and then let's just say they never got caught. And I've seen cases like that. They murdered somebody, but then the person that they murdered's friend came and killed them. And the next thing you know, the parents of the person that was the murderer went and killed them. And it's a mess. Next thing you know, it's a whole mess. It would have led to a whole war. The Lord was trying to prevent violence on the earth. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys, all right? But let me keep going. Verse 16, and it says, "And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden." So it says that Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod. So Nod was to the east of Eden. So you got the land of Eden, and to the east of that was the land of Nod. So Eden was described, according to verse 16, as being in the presence of the Lord. Not only the garden, but Eden as well. And so that sparked something very, very interesting. Let's go ahead real quick, guys. And let's go to Jeremiah chapter 52. Jeremiah chapter 52, and I'm going to read verse 3, and it says, verse 2, "And he did that which was evil in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For the anger of the Lord For through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, till he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon, because eventually the Lord used the Babylonians to do what? Get the children of Israel out of his presence. And his presence is linked with being in the land. So what is Eden? Is Eden Jerusalem? Is Eden Judah? I have no idea. But hey, let's keep reading. I love this stuff, man. I do. I love the Bible. I love thought-provoking stuff making you think. I love this kind of stuff, man. I get a joy out of it. 2 Kings chapter 24, and I'm going to read verse 20, and it says, For through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, until he had cast them out from his presence, and Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. But that was pretty much the same thing as Jeremiah, but I was just kind of showing you how the Lord's presence was in Eden. Okay, it was wherever the Lord sits whatever he has his eyes on, that's where his presence dwelt. And in this time, his presence dwelt in the garden, and as well as in Eden, which the garden was located. Okay, and later on, it was in the land of Canaan, or the land of Israel as we know it, and also in that garden, which was Jerusalem. Okay, now let me keep reading. Verse 17, I'm just going to kind of read down. There's nothing I really want to precept. It says, And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he builded a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. Okay? And unto Enoch was born Irad. And Irad begat Mahujael. And Mahujael begat Methuselah. And Methuselah begat Lamech. And Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other was Zillah. And Ada bare Jabal. He was the father of such as dwelt in tents, and of such as have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ. Verse 22. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, Hear my voices, ye wives of Lamech, hearken to my speech. For I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. So it's obvious that Cain told his descendants what he did to his brother Abel. Verse 24, and it says, If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God, said she, have appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. And no doubt Abel and Seth, they were the seed of promise. So let's go real quick, guys. This is going to be the end of the chapter, but I just wanted to read something real quick. Luke chapter 3, verses 23 and 24. And it says, now this is the genealogy of Christ. It says, And Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, being as was supposed, the son of Joseph, which was the son of Heli, which was the son of Mahati, which was the son of Levi, which was the son of Malchi, which was the son of Gianna, which was the son of Joseph. And then it begins to run it down. It begins to continue to run it down. Then you get to verse 38. It says, which was the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God. and the sons of God being Adam, which means all of the promised sons after Adam would be considered the sons of God. So we see here that Seth, he was the seed of promise. Now that would have likely also been Abel. You know, he would have had that seed line, just like Seth, when you seen that seed line to Seth and it tracked it all the way to Christ. And I would even say it continues to go. But we see that Abel didn't get that pleasure of having his descendants go down because unfortunately our forefather by spirit was murdered before he ever got the chance to procreate. And that's a sad thing. But back to Genesis chapter 4, and I'm going to read this last verse 26. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. And then began men to call upon the name of the Lord, because again, Seth and his line, they were the seed of promise. Not necessarily his line per se, but in his line, the ones that were considered the seed of promise, okay? Those were the ones that were chosen by God to run that thing down all the way to the end until he returned, if that makes sense. But guys, I'm actually extremely tired right now, but I at least wanted to try to get this chapter out. My day is far from over, but I wanted to get this chapter out regardless. I hope you guys got some understanding. It's just a lot of little things and a lot of these chapters that we can miss. I would just say a lot of us, man, when we read, honestly, we have to slow down. And we have to really look carefully at what we're reading, because we have a bad habit as Israelites to just kind of run stuff over. But when you hear stuff like Cain, Abel, they did an offering, you can't just run that over, because a lot of us just like run stuff like that over. No, you have to look into that. What is that? It's a set of offering. But I thought offerings and stuff, I thought that didn't come to, the nation of Israel. So that little stuff like that should pique your interest to investigate further, if you know what I mean. So all of the rules and the laws and the ordinances that were set for the nation of Israel, it was nothing new. These things had been these kind of things had been done aforetime. But Israel was the only nation that got that, but as a nation, if that makes sense. But that's it for this video, guys. I don't want to do too much rambling on. I'm looking forward to do chapter 5. We're gonna get into a little bit of lineage stuff. It's gonna be pretty interesting. I'm always hyped to do a chapter, whether I'm tired or not. I'm always ready, so. But that's it for this lesson, guys. I hope you guys got some understanding. And with that, shalom.